All right, we got another spin that shit episode for you. Um, this is Nicholas Edward Williams is on the show with us today. Great guy, met him over the summer. Super talented. He's got the best podcast. Better than this one. The best podcast that's out there. You have to check it out. American Songcatcher. You'll definitely be pleased with that. We're going to talk about that along with his music, his folk music that he's got. He's got records that got two records out under this name, and the new one's really good. I got the pre-order vinyl coming soon. So yeah, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. So sit tight. I do want to say thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing, doing all that good stuff to help grow this channel. We're on Facebook, Instagram, whatever you can do to help us out, we'll take it. It's been a lot of fun. Met a lot of good people here so far this past year, and we're slowly climbing. So just want to say thanks to everyone. Let's go talk to Nick and see what he's got to say. All right, man. Well, I want to say thanks for being on. It's been a while. We've been trying to get this worked out, but you know how schedules go.
Yes. I think we've been talking about this for like 6 months or so.
It seems like it. What do you have a shortened name? Because every time I try and reference you or talk to somebody, I go Nicholas Edward Williams all the way through. Like, do people call you Nick or Nicholas?
People call me Nick. Not many people call me Nicholas. And then I've got a slew of nicknames that have lasted since middle school for some reason. So just depends on who I'm talking to, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll call you Nick now.
That sounds great.
So, I don't know how many of these shows you've watched, but we're pretty laid back. And I always like first time guest on. I want basically just a background, where you're from, your influences, that sort of thing, how you got started playing music.
Sure.
We'll start there.
I was born in Seattle, Washington. My family, I have a huge extended family, and we kind of followed each other for the first 9 years of my life. And all my aunts and uncles worked together. And my grandpa owned a bunch of Dairy Queens. So we all kind of shifted around between Washington State and then landed in Sacramento, California. Me and my parents ended up moving out to Ohio when I was in elementary school, and then Texas, then back to Ohio. Stayed there through college. I was a lacrosse player before I was a musician. I didn't start playing music until I was a senior in high school. And I was on scholarship to play at Ohio State. And at the time, I was just getting my feet wet in open mics and stuff like that my freshman and sophomore year of college. And then at the end of my freshman year, I had my first ACL tear. I ended up tearing it 3 times in the first 2.5 years that I was there. So I spent a lot of time depressed, number one. I spent a lot of time on my butt and really started pouring those emotions and what I was feeling into music. And also I was taking Vicodin and Percocets and really just like looping out pretty hard and writing some good stuff. And that's kind of around the time that I really started smoking marijuana a lot too. So it was like this concoction of things that happened at the same time. And I really started investing in music after my 3rd tear, because I realized that I wasn't going to have a future in lacrosse. Not that there's really much future anyways, besides being a coach or getting to a professional level, which luckily I was able to do later in life for a year. But I really started putting all my eggs into a basket of music. And then I started playing some shows in Columbus, where I'm from. And then after I got kicked out of college and got kicked out of the lacrosse team, which is another story entirely, I went to Chicago, and which is what every folk singer does. Not really at all. And I found myself kind of trapped in a, working at Borders bookstore, making really crappy money and not really making any kind of headway on my music career. I'd recorded my first record. At the time before I left Chicago, I was performing under a moniker called Weatherman, spelled WHETHERMAN. and it's kind of more folk Americana, which is a more broad way to describe it, at least. And so I had one record that I released in Ohio, and then I moved to Chicago. I recorded my second record there, and then really wasn't sure if I was going to keep playing music or not. And I knew that I wanted to go to the beach somewhere. So I had my family out in California that I was really considering moving out to and being with. And then I had a friend from high school, one of my best friends, and he had an opportunity in Florida that I couldn't pass up, of coaching lacrosse and a place to stay for a summer. And then I could kind of decide if I wanted to stay after that. And I played a couple of gigs right when I got into town. I just happened to meet this certain person who introduced me to a drummer in town, who became one of my biggest allies in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I moved to. I ended up staying there for 4 years, 3 of which I was working restaurant jobs and playing a lot of gigs in town, like every, bar gig that you can think of. And then I slowly started, I quit my serving job 3 times, but they kept hiring me back. And I would go out and do tours, like regional tours here and there. And I would make enough money to go on tour. I'd spend it all on tour, come back, start working, do the same thing three times. It took the 3rd time for me to actually be able to stay out and do more shows and be sustainable. And that was in 2011. So 10 years ago was when I first went full-time with music, and I have been full-time with music since then. And then I moved into this is the long form answer if you didn't guess.
Oh no, people like these juicy bits.
I ended up moving into my Saturn Ion, and I lived out of that and on people's couches for about a year. I got a Honda Element, and then I moved into that, and I lived into that for about 3 years. I met my wife in that time, and she moved into the car with me for the last 6 months of that time in the Element. And then we very quickly decided that if we're going to do this, we need a bigger vehicle. So we ended up getting a Sprinter van. We outfitted it to be a camper. We lived in that for 4 years. And then I landed in Chattanooga, where we are now, about 3.5 years ago. And the rest is history.
That's great, man. You've been everywhere. I've been a lot of inspiration, yes, come from all over.
Yeah, I had the benefit of traveling a lot growing up. My grandparents were kind of the main catalyst for that. My grandmother was big onto going and visiting family grave sites. And so we would go, and we had family all across the country. And she also wanted to show us the national parks. So we got in their motorhome, I think 3 summers, and we would travel from California to Hershey, Pennsylvania and back, but do different routes. I don't know why we always ended up at the Hershey factory, but and that really inspired me, I think, later in life, or at least got me used to moving and used to adapting to different circumstances, getting exposed to different cultures, the different, landscapes, that sort of thing. And I really have had an easy time traveling since then. I think I would attribute it to my grandparents first and foremost. But yeah, and then once you start booking shows and realizing that you need to make money to stay sustainable, I just ended up playing about 200 shows a year from 2012 until 2016. I was doing 180 to 200 shows a year.
Oh man.
And yeah,
grinding
it out, doing, all the things that you shouldn't do as a touring musician. Like I would play like 3 shows in the same city and, really just take whatever opportunity I could get. And then, and it worked somehow. I also, I was living on pretty meager income, and I would be spooning my speakers at night before my wife moved in with me. I'd be like, sleeping with my music equipment and eating ramen and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the back of my van. I didn't have like, a cooler or anything like that. It was really rugged. Looking back on it now, I'm just kind of blown away. But
it's a great story, though. You'll be able to share that forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like that open, well, I think you end up realizing you have to have a more open mindset when you get on the road and you start touring, and because you get to meet so many people and you get to see so many places and be exposed to different experiences. If you just learn to say yes to things, it definitely changes your outlook. And also you can't take all your things with you while you're traveling. So you really got to get rid of the clutter in your life, which I did like several times. And the importance of that also, but just changing my priorities around what was important was a big part of that too.
Yeah. So during this span of time, who were you listening to? What music were you really like diving into, especially when you actually started playing music when you became a senior, grabbing a
Um,
guitar?
I was, and there's a story behind this as well. I was really big into uh, what I guess we could look back on as pop folk music. I was really into Howie Day, John Mayer, Dave Matthews Band. I was really into Brennan James, like a whole slew of people that were kind of singer songwriters. But I was really, when I first started playing, all I played was John Mayer songs, because they were really challenging on guitar, and kind of looking back, like I'm glad that I learned that part of it, because he actually is an amazing guitarist, and obviously he sings well too, and he's got great songs for mainstream America. But um, I I have this story. It's the only gig I've ever been booed off stage, and I was playing in a bar on campus in Ohio State, and I was playing 3 hours, and I would say like 2 hours of it was John Mayer songs. And this group of bikers came into this bar, and I was up kind of in the corner on the second floor, but it was like a balcony that overlooked the whole Shotgun kind of bar. And
Yeah.
they came in, and I was playing Your Body's a Wonderland. And they were asking me to play Freebird, like through while I was playing the song. And eventually I like cut the song short, and I was like, I don't play that fucking song. I hope I can say fucking. And
Yeah, you can say whatever.
they completely, they took away all of my masculinity. I mean, I was like, I was a shell after they were done with me, and it was rough. I actually just stopped playing for almost a year after that, because I was like, I don't know if I can do that again.
Yeah,
um,
that's rough. I mean, it happened.
yeah, it was really rough. But I wasn't, my family wasn't musical. My mom, her whole claim to fame is that she could play Star Wars on the flute. My dad listened to AM radio growing up. I mean, all I heard was, if I did hear the radio, it was like Casey Kasem top 40 hits, and Delilah, and that sort of thing. But then also my mom played a lot of Phil Collins. Like, if there was a soundtrack to my first like 5 years of life or 6 years of life, it would be Phil Collins and Genesis, and Michael Jackson. So I kind of grew up with like all the popular things. It took me a long time to dissect all of that and figure out where I fit in. Because, I think I probably would have been perfectly happy playing pop music if I was successful with it early on. But because I wasn't, I kept searching for who I was and what I really, resonated with. So all that early stuff was just, I started off like every other kid. I was like learning Pearl Jam, and I was learning Led Zeppelin songs, and I was learning Pink Floyd, and I had no real direction though. It was just kind of like, you know, whatever I could take in, I was trying to learn, I guess.
Right. But now that you tell me all this, it kind of makes sense now how you ended up. I found out about you through the podcast you have, American Songcatcher,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, there's a million podcasts out there, including this one. I think
Yeah.
your podcast is my favorite. Like, you're
Wow.
better than your podcast is better than Joe Rogan to me. Like, I love listening to your stuff.
That is a huge compliment. Thanks, man. I
Hey, I
appreciate you
mean,
saying that.
there's music junkies out there that want to just learn about everything they can, and the
Yeah.
knowledge and time spent and like you putting in the stories and how you word things and the way you tell the story too of different artists is great.
Thank you. Yeah.
You
I've
have a
tried
great
them.
podcast voice too.
Thanks.
It's
It took
soothing, especially on long road trips.
Well, it's funny because when I first started making like the first episode, or actually even just the trailer was the first thing I started off with. And I ran the first couple takes by my wife, and she's a really good, she has a good perspective on, separating between the partnership and being like, what is quality and what is not quality. And she was just like, you sound so monotone. You sound like you're not having a good time. Like there's no emotion to your voice, and there's no story you're telling, essentially. And so I actually was really mad at first because I put a lot of effort into it. But then I listened back a couple of times and I sent it to a couple more people, and it was the same story of like, really trying to just have a conversational voice. And I still struggle with it sometimes, trying to, when I'm editing the show, which is a long task in itself, just because I mess up so many times, and I end up like trying to get the wording just right so that the emotion of the story is there, and trying to follow the artist's emotion in the story too. It's really important to me to get a full view, not just all the glamorous stuff of what the artist does, but all the trials and tribulations that they had to go through, the ways in which they fucked up, the ways in which they, really screwed other people's lives sometimes. Just the human aspect of it all, right, is what tells the best story. So it's an arduous process to get through each episode to get them just right. But I've recently, since starting the second season, I've really found a stride and figuring out what works. And also it helps, hearing feedback, and I've gotten some good critical feedback too, about ways to improve it. And I feel like it's on a pretty good path right now. And it's strange. I mean, I've spent so many years being a folk singer and trying to reach people like Dom Flemons and Willie Watson, and trying to get in the scope of that community and become, so that people are aware of what I'm doing. And the podcast, because it's not a medium that's music necessarily, it's a medium of podcasting, it's a medium of education, of information. It took 2 episodes to get into that community somehow, which was really, it threw me for a loop initially, because I was just in disbelief. Like, I don't understand how Willie Watson is posting about this podcast right now. And I think since that point, especially, I really realized that it is a creative effort for me, and it's about something I'm so passionate about, in preservation of these songs, these stories, these artists. But hearing that it resonates with people at that level made me understand that there's so many people in between that are finding these stories so valid and so informative. And I think it just gives so much more depth to the songs after you start hearing them again, because once you know the story of the artist, which I think is my favorite part of all that, of getting to listen back to songs and be like, man, they were going through a really hard time when they wrote that one, or when they recorded that,
Yeah.
That sort of thing is really cool to me.
Yeah. It's, I think that's how you've kind of traveled and found your way into folk, like just going back and searching through, and it just kind of resonated with you, and that's just who you became.
Yeah, it's strange because I found folk music, and I found traditional music, and bluegrass, old time Appalachian music at a festival down in Florida, in Live Oak, Florida. It's at a place called the Spirit of Swan Music Park. And I got to perform there for the first time in 2010. And every time that I went there, which was every year since then, essentially I've gotten to play at that venue, either at their spring festival or their fall festival, and some other ones in between. I really got to kind of grow up as a musician there. I got to work out all the things that I guess I was holding on to from my previous times, like the pop music, the things that I was struggling with, of like, what kind of genre am I? I figured that out at that place by listening to other artists and being exposed to string music for the first time. So like there was a seed that got planted there for sure. And then when I had I talked about touring 180, 200 shows a year, that was not a sustainable pace. So when everything caught up with me in 2017 of what I was doing to myself and how deeply unhappy I was, because I had all these expectations of what success was, and I was never going to fulfill them. I also couldn't actually define what I was trying to do. What was my end goal? What was my, where was I trying to get? I was just obsessed with the next thing and the next thing. And also just like really, really hung up, and I still struggle with this, but still really hung up on the audience reception. Was it, like really critiquing the applause? Like, was that honest? Was that earnest applause? Were they really paying attention? Were they talking during the set? That sort of thing. I got so far down the rabbit hole that I had the freedom to step away from that project, and we moved to Costa Rica for 7 months and worked down there. And I really, I kind of explored inward, and by exploring inward, I found like my heart is at that place, that Spirit of Swan Music Park. It is a very special place to me. And I really started looking into the music that I learned from there and how much it meant to me. And that's when I think things really started churning towards music history, towards education, towards learning different styles of music, to play different styles of music. So yeah, it was a strange, like, whirlwind to get to that point. It was a shitstorm, really.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm and everything to just keep going with the music and sharing folk music and the history, because most of the, especially kids these days, if they're not searching for it, they're really not going to have it in front of them the way that TV and the radio is. It's hard to,
you're right.
But let's talk about this new album you got.
Sure.
It's great. I pre-ordered, so I can't wait to get the vinyl.
I can't wait to get it out to you, man. The vinyl looks, and the design is amazing, so I can't wait to actually see it in person.
Yeah. I keep wanting, it's called Folk Songs for Old Time's Sake, and I keep wanting to call it Folk Songs for Folk's Sake. I don't know why. Maybe because you have the merchandise that says folk, and all that stuff.
Yeah, folk and A. Yeah. I'm playing on the folk thing pretty hard.
But what can you tell me was different about this record versus your previous with As I Go Rambling?
A lot of things. Namely, I think I had a very, I don't think, I know that I had a very clear mission of what sound I wanted to get, what the end product was. I've never been so clear as like exactly knowing what instrumentation I wanted in every song, where I wanted it, the track order, down to the themes of the different recording styles that were throughout the song. And I knew, or throughout the record, I knew that I didn't want to do everything in the same studio. Have this kind of scene. I've done that. I did it 8 times with Weatherman. I did it again for the first record with As I Go Rambling Around. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I really wanted to experiment on the environment of each song, like the recording quality of each environment. So I recorded the whole thing myself, using all my podcast equipment. And the only, with exception to some of the banjo parts, which were done by a friend of mine that lives in Brevard, North Carolina, and he did it at his studio. But everything else was done typically live. All of my takes are live. And then there's a couple tunes that are fully live with upright bass, with harmonies, with fiddle, and then another couple that are live with clarinet. And the reason that I wanted to do that is because every record I've done before now has been me and the guitar together. I prefer to do all the recordings that way because it has a very organic sound to it. Every time I've tried to record them separately, it comes out being a little bit more, a little too polished, or a little less than it would sound if I was going to play in front of you, which is the sound I want. I want it to come across as like I'm playing right in front of you. But I wanted the the different themes to be centralized as like field recordings in different environments, so that you kind of, there's essentially four different environments throughout the record. And there's, it's kind of, I chopped it up so that those four themes are kind of separated over and over again, but they're just recorded in different environments. One's recorded in my house. Another one was recorded about 300 yards from here at a different house. The rest of them were either recorded in a theater or inside of my friend's studio with my equipment. So that part was different. I also did all of the editing and all the mixing, which is also different. I've been a part of the editing process before, but never the entire record. And I've been a part of the mixing process, but never the entire record. And I found a huge liberation in my anxiety that comes after tracking. Every time I've tracked a record, because you're essentially sending notes off to your engineer. They'll send you a mix and you'll come back and you'll say, oh, I think you need to turn down the bass, or you needs more low end or whatever. You're kind of like just sending drafts back and forth, and it's an arduous process. And sometimes you just want to be like, hey man, you didn't change that. Or, I'm a person that I prefer creative control, and if I have a vision in mind. And so this was really, really nice for me because I could just tweak everything, and I wasn't so hyper focused on getting the exact sound that I wanted, because, I've been in a studio and listened to a snare hit for like 3 hours before, just trying to get the right snare hit. And then I'm so far down the rabbit hole that I can't even listen to the song anymore because I'm just too close to it. But I was really able to mix on the fly this time, which was nice because the instrumentation wasn't so complex, number one, but also number two, the tone of me and the guitar was the main thing. And just wrapping things around that audially, just panning certain things here and there. I didn't have to do a lot of EQ. I didn't have to do a lot of plugins or anything like that. I just set things up and the microphone did the work, which was really nice. So it's a lot different. And the last record I did entirely in one studio in 5 days, and brought in studio musicians to be a part of that. This one took 2 months, but not every day, but 2 months from, tracking from front to back, and then mixing took a couple days, and that was it. So it's vastly different as far as like the process goes.
Right. Well, with you having that much hands-on with all of it, I would imagine that you're more closely connected to the outcome. Like you're probably even more proud of this record just for that reason.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think I've ever set out to have a certain sound. I've been very experimental in the studio before, especially with the Weatherman project, because all the people that were involved were really close friends. And we were kind of like, they would come in, they had an idea, they'd listen to the song beforehand, but I was really open to their interpretations of what should happen. And it's very similar to this one in that respect. Like anytime I have a musician on, I trust them to figure out what fits their, for the most part. I'll direct certain things like, I don't speak music theory. So I'll tell a bass player like, like boom, chick, boom, chick, that sort of thing. Just allowing them to have a template at least to work with if they don't have something in mind already. And, with Gordon, who played clarinet, I literally didn't have to say anything. The first time he started playing his instrument, I was like, whatever you want to do, it just sounds so good. I'm open to that. And then with harmonies, that also really worked out very quickly because the two gals that sang with me and played upright and fiddle have been in bands together, and their voices have synced in the past for many years. So they were an easy bet because both of their tones are way above mine. So it's just like hitting these Carter family harmonies way up top above me, it just turned out really easy and really, really fun. But yeah, I think that it was the first time when I've had a vision and actually achieved it. So there's a lot of reasons that I'm really proud of this record, but that's probably one of the main ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I most of the time I listen to music other than in the car. It's normally at work when I'm doing something, but so I'll put your stuff on and listen through, every few days or whatever my mood may be. But I've noticed today I had some your stuff on. I noticed today that I came to the conclusion, like, when you sing, how an artist wants to have their own distinct thing. Like if you turned on the radio and didn't tell me that whoever it was going to be, I could pick them
Mhm.
out. Like
Yeah.
you have that, and I think that's important for an artist. You have your own unique sound,
Thank you.
vocally and also with your instruments. So I think that's huge. I just want to tell you that. I mean,
Yeah. I
important.
mean, anybody that I listen to has a unique sound. I think there's with traditional music, it's tricky because certain people harken back to like high lonesome sounds or whatever. But I really respect musicians that have their own unique sound or their own unique timbre that they bring to a traditional sound. And in my when I was talking with David Holt, who was he was a banjo player for Doc Watson for a long time, and he's also been a PBS TV host and radio host. I really value his opinion, so I sent him this record first, and he told me something that I didn't really at first I didn't understand entirely, but the more that I thought about it, the more it made sense. And he said that I'm not straight old time, I'm not straight traditional, and I'm not straight commercial. I'm somewhere in between, and I'm able to be a gap, a bridge that is between that gap to bring people from commercial music to old time music and vice versa, which it's a really at
That's
first I was
interesting.
kind of yeah at first I was kind of like I really wish I was just old time traditional, but I know I'm not because I'm not trained and I haven't learned from a mentor, and I'm not carrying a legacy
Right.
necessarily. I'm interpreting what I've heard, and it's the way I've been interpreting is through being nomadic and being a part of different, I guess appreciating by experiencing different cultures. So I don't have heritage that lines up with traditional music whatsoever. So I can't expect myself to sound like that. But the more that I thought about that, it is an honor to be in that position because it is, and exactly what the podcast aims to do is to bring people towards traditional music from both sides, or from for traditional heavy lovers to understand a story about Hank Williams that's more commercial, or a more successful pioneering artist, or Dolly Parton or whatever, Willie Nelson, and just to get people intrigued on the history, because it's just super valuable. And
Right.
so all that to say, I really appreciate you saying that, because it falls in line with that same thing of
Yeah. I would
you
agree
can
with
hear on the radio.
Dave on that.
Yeah.
On the whole, yeah, I could see that for sure. Especially you starting out with a lot of pop, and you blend that.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
you don't sound like some old mountain man just doing high
Right.
lonesome screaming.
Right. Right. There's some
I don't
sort
hear
of
Roscoe in you.
no, definitely not. Definitely no Doc Boggs or Roscoe.
Yeah.
Um, but I love that music, and I think there is, something to be said for coming from where I'm coming from, and interpreting it. And straight traditional music lovers will have a harder time with it than anybody. And I've already experienced some of that, and I actually appreciate that critique, because I'm not trying to be straight traditional, and I'm not trying to be inauthentic to myself or to the music. So I'm just being a folk singer in a lot of ways, and my voice happens to have a history of singing polished music and working really hard to get a clean, warm timbre. So it's just what it is right now. I'm sure it's going to change and change and change, but
Yeah. So who's an artist that you'd like to work with? Is there anyone that pops out?
oh yeah. As far as recording or as far as performing?
Either way, is there like a bucket list person that's always been on your mind that'd be cool to do something with?
Definitely. Definitely. Well, if it's somebody that's alive, there's a couple people I've actually, one of which actually might be happening this June. I did a show at the Great Smoky Mountain Heritage Center, which is in Townsend, Tennessee. And they've got this beautiful little outdoor amphitheater. And after playing, the woman who ran it asked me if I'd heard of Dom Flemons, and I was like, yeah, of course. And knock on wood, she is going to organize us playing together next summer at the concert series. So there's one. He was a bucket lister for a long time, and when I got to talk to him for the podcast, listening back, I had a really hard time just controlling my excitement. Another person would easily be Willie Watson. And then there's some other artists like Chris Thiele. I would love to be able to play with him someday. I think it would probably end up being very short because his musicality is so far and above, especially theory-wise, where I'm at. And then Blind Boy Paxton would be really fun too. Hopefully I'll be able to do some shows next year with John Tavius Willis, who's another person that has kind of become another person I'd really like to play with as a bucket list. Man, yeah, I think those are probably the people that come to mind first, I guess. But there's always pipe dreams too. But those are kind of the, I guess, potentially realistic people that I could play with. But
yeah.
Yeah.
We just had Dom on the show, I don't know, a month ago or something. Man, he's a great guy. He's supposed to come back on here, and we're just going to talk about banjo history, him and JD Wilkes of the Shack Shakers.
Yes.
Because they're good buddies, and, they'll go down the rabbit hole, I'm sure, on all kinds of banjo stuff that I don't know. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think he can talk for days about anything music related. Yeah, I think I would also just like to be able to sit down with him and just really pick his brain. He's just fascinating, just a book. That guy has many books probably put together, but
right.
Yeah.
Did he tell you about his record collection?
Yeah, I saw. So he was talking to me in front of it. He was sitting.
Oh, okay.
In his whole back wall, and I was just like, "So what's going on behind you?" And he started pulling out records. He was like, "Oh, here's Memphis Jug Band. Here's Fats Waller. Here's just like everything." I mean, and it was just they're all have the protective sleeves, and you can tell he really takes good care of his stash. But yeah, that was I think he's
said
like
it was somewhere around 6,000 records.
It's insane. I know that he was really good friends with Mike Seeger, and I know that he likely got a lot of those from his relationships with different musicologists and people like that, and people that had him in mind to dump records to. And also, he just obviously goes when he's on tour, he buys a lot of records. But yeah, right. Man, I mean, I would love to go and just spin some of those records at his house.
Yeah. Go crate digging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one we always ask, if you could wake up tomorrow, what instrument would you like to be able to master? Is there any particular? I mean, you're doing a damn good job on guitar for sure already.
Thank you. I've really fallen a bit harder lately for banjos, especially fretless gourd banjos, if I can get my hands on them. I would say, yeah, I've really worked my tail off, and I'm still not even close to getting clawhammer style down. I play somewhere between like a Western North Carolina version of clawhammer, and I think that would probably be the instrument. But also, thinking about this question recently, for whatever reason, so the first instrument I played was in third grade was a violin, and I was awful, and I couldn't read music, and I never practiced, but I was in orchestra somehow. So my teacher would put me in the very, very back, And my mom always said that, at the concerts that you could see, you could never hear me, but you could always tell where I was, because my bow would always go up in the opposite direction than the other bows. But I would love to learn fiddle, and it's just the room for error is just massive on that instrument. But I would love to be able to learn that and play it semi sweetly at some point. That would be great.
Yeah, me too.
Just for as far as instruments, I don't currently play. I do play a lot of other instruments that I love playing, but yeah, that's one that's just very much beyond me at this point.
Yeah. So before we sign off, you mind picking us a song or two?
Sure. Would love to. Actually, since we're talking about the banjo, just happen to have one right here.
What kind of banjo do you have there?
This is a Gretsch banjo. And I started off with just a crappy Fender banjo. And one of my good friends gave it to me down in Florida, and I used it on several records, starting back as early as 2013, I think. And I never really took it too seriously. And then we were visiting some other friends up in just outside of Nashville, and he had this banjo on his wall. And every time I'd go over there, I'd play it. Over to their house, I would play it. And one day he said, "Man, that thing just sounds too good in your hands. Why don't you take that one and I'll take your crappy one?" So he traded me, because he doesn't really play very often. And I've had it ever since. I think that was 4 years ago. Grab this. So this tune is an old tune that was preserved by a fellow named Bascom Lamar Lunsford, who is based out of Asheville, North Carolina. He's famous for creating folk festivals. He created the first folk festival in Asheville in 1923. He also single-handedly, in one session with the Library of Congress, preserved 360 songs by memory, most of which were either by fiddle or banjo. He was called the minstrel of the Appalachians. He was a really unique character. He really despised the way that people looked at mountain music and mountain musicians for a long time. So he would always dress in these like extremely polished, starchy suits, and would play old time banjo. And so it's just, he was an incredibly influential person. And he heard this song from a local that he knew in Haywood County. And apparently that guy learned it from his grandmother, and so on and so forth. People don't exactly know. It's probably from the British Isles, at least in its original form. But he was the first one to record it. And it's called "I Wish I Was the Mole in the Ground." And I changed it to "Mole in the Ground" and just changed around a couple of the lyrics, as the folk singer does, and did my own arrangement on the banjo with it. So. Wish I was a mole in the ground. Wish I was a mole in the ground. If I was a mole in the ground, I could beat that mountain down. And I wish I was a mole in the ground. Let me want a $9 shot. Let me want a $9 shot. I'll come up on the hill with my $10 bill. Say, baby, where you been so long? Where you been, girl? Honey, where you been so long? Honey, where
been so long. Said I've been round and been with them rough and rowdy men. Yeah, I'm never going back again. I don't like them railroad men. I don't like them railroad men. Cause a railroad man, they kill you when they can. Yeah, they'll drink up your blood like wine. Like wine. Wish I was a lizard in the spring. Wish I was a lizard in the spring. Said a lizard in the spring, I could hear my lover sing. Well, I wish I was a lizard in the spring. Emmy wants a $9 shot. Emmy wants a $9 shot. I come up on the hill, my $10 bill. Sing, baby, where you been so long? I wish I was a mole in the ground. I wish I was a mole in the ground. I was a mole in the ground, could root that mountain down. I wish I was a mole in the ground.
Sounded good, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, I need to do some work on the banjo myself.
Don't we all, man? Don't we all? You want to play one on the guitar?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what episode that was when you went into his story.
It's like
last season.
Episode 2 of season 1.
Yeah. You know what I thought would be great too? Like, I just thought, like, you telling those stories, and I'm such a visual type of learner.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if you can compile, I don't know what's out there as far as just kind of like a PBS Ken Burns documentary style, you know, imagery,
I have thought about it.
Photos
Yes.
coming in and out. And I
There's
don't know what
definitely
needs to be done, but that would be great.
There's enough archival footage for most artists, and there's definitely enough pictures for the most part, except for folks like Blind Blake. That one would be hard to include because there's only 2 pictures of him and no footage. And Reverend Gary Davis, there's a lot of like teaching footage, but I've thought about it, and I wanted to put together some sort of a documentary at some point. I don't know if, I mean, it would take a long time for me to do, so it'd probably be something I would hire out somebody else to do. But I've definitely thought about it just because I love watching music documentaries, and
I try and buy them. Like, I buy every music documentary DVD I can get my hands on. But,
yeah, I mean,
that's in my wheelhouse anyway.
That medium is definitely my favorite to take in information if you're watching a documentary. And these episodes have kind of become audio documentaries in a lot of ways. But I've thought about it. It's just no time, man. There's just no time. I'll play Shake Sugaree. This is a tune by Elizabeth Cotton. And the term Shake Sugaree was used in the area of North Carolina that she grew up, which is just outside of Chapel Hill. And when people were poor, they would shake sugaree, which meant they would take sugar and throw it on the ground and dance around and make a percussive sound. And it was kind of a way of having fun despite being in poverty. And a lot of the song refers to selling and pawning everything that you own just to kind of make ends meet. She wrote it with her great-grandchildren, one of which actually sings on the recorded version from 1969, I want to say it was, or 1972, I can't remember. This version has been slightly rearranged, and I kind of added a couple ragtime elements to it. It's also a bit more jumpy and faster than her version, but she doesn't play harmonica on hers either. Have a little song, won't take long. Sing it right, once or twice. Oh, Lord, in me, did not shake that sugary. Everything I got is done in pawn. Pawn my watch, pawn my chain, pawn everything that was in my name. Oh, Lord, in me did not shake that sugary. And now everything I got is done in pawn. Pawn my chair, you pawn my bed. Ain't got no bed to lay my head. Oh, Lord, in me did not shake that sugary. Everything I got is done in pawn. Pawn my tobacco, you pawn my pipe, pawn everything that was in my side. Oh, Lord, in me did not shake that sugary. Everything I got is done in pawn. Pawn my farm, pawn my plow, pawn everything that was in my cow. Oh, Lord, in me did not shake that sugary. And now everything I got is done in pawn. Everything I got is done in pawn. Everything I got is done in pawn. Oh, now it's done in pawn.
Nice.
Thanks, man.
I was worried that once you started in on harmonica that like the, crappy
We start
computer
clipping.
speakers would clip out or something, but did do too bad.
All right, man. Love that.
Well, where can we tell the people to find you? What's the best place to find your music and connect and support you and by your? I know you got a Patreon for the podcast and all that good stuff.
Yes. The easiest thing to do would be to find Nicholas Edward Williams on Instagram. There is a link there that's a smart link to all the things music related. You can also do the same thing if you go to the American Songcatcher page on Instagram. There's a smart link there that can take you to the Patreon, to all the episodes on different platforms. And that's probably the easiest ways to do things, I think. The new record is available on
on Spotify. It's available on streaming and through vinyl. I'm doing pre-orders for vinyl still. The actual vinyls get in a few weeks, and then they'll be sent out at the end of December. And the best way to find that is through the link on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way.
Good deal. All right, man. Well,
thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again in the future or something. Hopefully, I don't know, catch you at a festival or something, or
who knows? Would love to reconnect. If not down in Tennessee somewhere, then hopefully up in your neck of the woods at some point.
Yeah, I'll be watching. I'll see if you go on another little tour.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping here. Fingers crossed for 2022.
Good deal.
All right, man.
Take care, and everyone go check out Nicholas's music and podcast.
Thank you, sir. Later. Bye.